A month ago, I described to you in this podcast the detailed colorectal cancer screening test kit that I got in the mail and the remarkability of the stool sample that I tested because it was multicolored. There was 2 distinct colors in it. And I scraped both to make sure I would find any blood. And guess what? I got a letter in the mail. And that letter that usually says, "Congratulations, your sample was clean every 2 years," said your sample was, in bold, abnormal. 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 In bold, as in alert, 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 alert. We've discovered a deadly disease in you. Alert, alert, alert. Well, that was a shitty fucking day for me. Because I, of course, thought the worst. And why shouldn't I? I'm a fat, disgusting, obese man who is just waiting to die. Just waiting to get the word. Yes, James, you're dying. Of course you are. Look at your fucking health. Of course you're dying. This is not a surprise to anyone. Should it be a surprise to you? No. So the colonoscopy was automatically booked for me, as urgent things are, for 1 month later, December 9th, 2021, a Thursday. I had the colonoscopy instructions. Let me read them to you. You young people who don't have to have colonoscopies, this is a dream, because I've had 2 colonoscopies before. It has handwritten on it, "No nuts or seeds, starts December 2nd. Okay. Changed my bread, put up a little sign in the kitchen that said "No nuts." Some people took that the wrong way. Dietary restrictions, December 7th. 48 hours before your colonoscopy, start a low-residue diet. See reverse side. Basically, don't drink anything that has color in it, or sugar, or cream, or anything. Just clear broth, or Sprite. Okay, that's fine. 7 p.m. the night before, change from a low-residue diet to a clear fluid diet. So, not too bad, not too bad. And then comes the Pegolite. Now, this is the horrible thing that is in a jug the size that you would change the oil on your car. It is complete oil change size that you are to drink either all at once or in 2 sessions. Now, I will get to that later. Because I've had 2 colonoscopies before. 2. The first time, I had a lump in my ass. Just inside my ass. I don't know if it was a hemorrhoid or what, but I went to the doctor. The doctor didn't want to put his finger in my ass. So he sent me to a specialist. A specialist stuck his finger in my ass. Lubed up first, stuck it in, found a hard spot, didn't really look at it with a scope like my doctor said he would. Said, "I'll book you to a colonoscopy on Tuesday." Thought I was dying. The following Tuesday, a few days, like 3-4 days later, I was having a colonoscopy, and it was hell. The preparation was hell, because I had my last meal on Sunday night, 2 days before. Basically, I went 60-plus hours without eating anything, except for sugar, because I could have popsicles and I could have Jell-O. And oh, fuck. What I should have done is waited to the 48 hours before the procedure, but I said, no, I just don't want to risk having stuff in my intestine. I'm dying. I have to find it. So I didn't eat for 65 some hours, I think. And what I did eat, though, what they would let you eat is popsicles. So my partner got me orange popsicles. And there is no amount of orange popsicles or orange Kool-Aid or Sprite or ginger ale that you can drink that will fill you when you are starving. No amount. Literally, you could eat a truckload of that shit and you will feel hungrier. And as a fat man being hungry, it was worse. I experienced profound hunger, okay, and malnutrition for a short period of time. And, I'm sorry to people. You're not listening now. Everybody listen to me has lots of money, obviously. I have a very high wage listenership, I'm sure. I mean, why else would you listen to me? Educated, luxury car driving. That's the way I picture my listeners, all of you. And naked, and lots of wrinkly age spots all over you. That's how I picture you. Yeah, you can fight that and say, no, James, you're wrong, but that's what I'm doing. Anyway, I experienced it was hell. It was absolute fucking shit hell. And then you had to give yourself an enema the night before and an enema in the morning. An enema! My mother, the psychotic nurse, used to give me enemas when I was like 3 because I got constipated, probably from being too tense to eat anything around her or to shit anything. So I would wobble from one foot to the other, and I don't know why, because, she was a nurse. She should know how to get fiber into me, but apparently that didn't work out. So when I was in the exam room for that time, getting ready for my colonoscopy, I was with a bunch of old men. Okay, this was 15 years ago. Now I'm 55 now. I was probably 40 then. And they probably thought, fat guy, 40, let's get him, checked. So let's get him scoped because he probably has cancer. Because fat people have cancer in their bowel. Happens. I had an aunt who had colon cancer and died. She was quite old, but she still had it. And apparently that doesn't mean as much as somebody in your immediate family, but it did happen. So, yeah, you get screened because it is a preventable disease. If you get these screening kits in the mail, as we do in Canada, thank God for our healthcare system, then you can get screened and save your life. So, but I have to think that these screenings, that these colonoscopies that I had must have cost $30,000 each. I mean, they weren't cheap. They had to be expensive. There's a lot involved in them. It's practically like an operation in a way. I got Demerol the first time, by the way. You could have cut off my legs and stuck 6 cocks in my mouth and I wouldn't have cared. You could have done anything to me. Sticking a 5-foot pole up my ass, minor stuff. Nothing. What a drug Demerol was. They don't use Demerol anymore. Anyway, for my second colonoscopy, which I got a few years later, had a constipation and tummy troubles. They sent me right away for a colonoscopy. I was like 45 years old. It was a few years later, and it had already improved because I only had to do one enema, one very expensive enema, and starve myself for only 1 day. So it was a cakewalk by comparison. But this time, it's different. This time, you have to drink this 4-liter jug, this gallon, literally a gallon, basically the contents of your oil in your car, all at once, or 2 liters per hour in 2 doses. So my specific instructions said, at 7 p.m. the night before, drink 2 liters of Peg-Lite solution, and you can drink it over 1 hour. So you have to get these 2 liters into you. Now, I'm a fat fucker. I don't care what you say. I am a big man. I'm 6 feet tall. I weigh hundreds of pounds, and I could not, for the life of me, it was physically impossible to drink 2 liters of something. It wasn't incredibly unpleasant. It was like water with a slight taste of fruit and grossness to it, but it wasn't absolutely disgusting. And they told you to eat a Gravol beforehand so you don't throw up. Well, I did that. That's a good thing I did, but then I could barely keep awake. I was worried I would fall asleep with the Gravol and shit my bed. Because it comes out as a big rush of diarrhea. I mean, that's the idea. People in Hollywood do this all the time. I don't know why. Because they're fucking nuts. You know what? You're fucking nuts, you people who think colon... Am I a better person because I cleanse my... Are the toxins gone from my body? Have things that have been in my colon for quote-unquote 5 years gone? No. No, they haven't, because I looked at the toilet and they weren't there. And yet my colon was completely cleansed out. So that's all bullshit. And painful and stupid. Incredibly flaky stupid. I'm sure there's worse things you can do, but cleansing yourself is pretty dumb. I'm sorry. Fuck you. Fuck you if you think cleansing is a good idea. So I could not fit the 2 liters in me. I could not do it in 1 hour. And I could not do it in an hour and a half. It was physically impossible. It was like literally my teeth were floating. There was no room in my stomach. It was not digesting. So I did not finish all of my solution. I lied and said I did. But I feared, you do all this work, you go in, you get a scoop up at your ass, and they say, no, sorry, there's stoolage in here. We can't go any further. You'll have to come back and do the whole thing again. get dropped off at the hospital, have your wife take a time off work in my case. So it was ugly. And I didn't want that to happen, especially if I thought I was dying, which I did. Of course I did. I'm James. I think I'm dying all the time. It worked out. I'll get to that in a moment. But I feared that it wouldn't. So yeah, you take it, and by the time you're halfway through the hour, you start shitting already. And you have bowel movements, and then they become more urgent. And they're just diarrhea. Everybody's had diarrhea. I'll take diarrhea over throwing up any day, as long as you're close to a toilet. If you're not close to a toilet, I would probably take throwing up, but I hate throwing up. So yeah, you just go to the bathroom, and it's liquid. It's a hot liquid. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that you have to sit down, and it can't come out beforehand, which in one case I didn't make it. Shot out. And then when it shoots out, it gets into the crevices of the toilet seat and everything. And, it's still there when you're taking apart your toilet 10 years later, which I did recently. And that diarrhea shot is still there. You can't get it all. You can douse it with bleach. You can pour gallons of bleach on it, but it's still there. But as far as starvation goes, this was a cakewalk. This was nothing. I had to stop eating at 7 o'clock the night before. But then I had to drink 2 liters of water, so I didn't want to eat very much. But still, a normal person can easily go from eating supper the night before and not eating and skipping breakfast the next day. That's not heroic. That's not traumatic. It's doable. It's something that happens in life. So yeah, it was, relatively speaking, not bad. The first time I went, when people starved for 60 hours, plus everybody in the waiting room was dreaming about, in the preparation area, was dreaming about the steak dinner they were going to go for. They didn't care if they had cancer. They were dreaming about that steak dinner. And these old guys, of course, a steak dinner is the only thing that one eats when one is hungry and famished and dreams about. I, growing up as a Gen Xer, dream about fast food. So I started thinking about a Big Mac, which I don't normally eat, but it seemed like a decadent, nice thing to eat. And I had it in my head that I was going to have a Big Mac, but I wasn't that hungry. Anyway, I did the procedures. I did most of the fluid in me. I felt like I still had one more squirt in me, but I was holding it in. I just didn't want to come out. So I went to the hospital. My wife dropped me off. I went in, go through the COVID screening and all that, and get in there. And the nurses are grumpy everywhere. They're all grumpy and curmudgeon. And then I get the nurse who does my intake, and she's a sweetheart. She's an absolute angel. She's fairly young. Maybe she's not jaded yet, but she was just, if I'm going in there to see if I have cancer, I want someone who is kind and empathetic. And she was all that. I think her name was Kim. I'm not entirely sure, because it was all a nightmare, of course. Colonoscopies aren't that bad, and I'll explain why, especially now. And my wife had a colonoscopy about a year ago, and she only had to drink a large cup of some very unpleasant fluid that apparently, I don't know, it's one cup that just did her in, and this stuff, those 2 liters is impossible. So I got there. They give you a bag to put your clothes in. They say, take everything off but your glasses and your socks, which I'm pretty sure a hooker told me once. Sorry, I know you can't make hooker jokes anymore. It's a tragedy. Sex worker. We'll call her a sex worker. And just leave it at that, okay? The fact is, the sex worker would probably want you to take off your glasses. I'm just saying. But do you want to? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm just going to shut up about that right now. Okay. So, I go to the bathroom. I squeeze out one more hot, oily shit. It's a bit yellow, and I'm thinking, oh God, it should be clear, and not yellow. Yellow is what you have when you're sick with diarrhea, when you have the flu, stomach flu. But no solids or anything. So I take off my clothes, and she gives me this giant gown that people who have to be carried out of their house by cranes wear. The morbidly obese 500-pound gown. That's what I got up to. And I'm not 500 pounds, but I'm a lot more than your average person, unfortunately. Thank you, pandemic. It was tattered. It didn't have all the straps on it, because they have one giant fat guy gown that they use, and they give you a different gown to wear to cover your ass. So I didn't bother doing up the gown. I just put on the other gown, sat in my bed. She covered me with a blanket. My feet hung off. They gave me an IV. The nurse said, "Are you scared of needles?" And I laughed. He said, "No, I'm not scared of needles. I had one 2 days ago when I got my booster shot for COVID, my third needle. And what I am scared of is, long things 5 feet long going up my ass. And you want me to ask me if I'm scared of a needle? I'm also scared of cancer. You're asking me if I'm scared of a needle? 5-foot pole up your ass, cancer, or a little prick in your fucking hand. No, I'm not scared of needles. And kudos to you people who are. I don't know why you're scared of needles. It's a phobia. People are scared of things that don't actually physically hurt them. I understand that. But work on it. Work on it. I've had a few phobias that I have to get over myself, I suppose, too. But, so I assumed I had advanced cancer. But eventually, I stopped caring. As I sat there in the bed, the nurse did this really long hour-long intake, or 45-minute-long intake, and she weighed me. I said, I don't weigh myself. I don't want to know that shit. I probably should want to know that shit, but she weighed me, and I thought it would be in kilograms because it's Canada, and they always weigh you at doctor's offices or anywhere in kilograms because that's what they have to enter. Well, the bitch weighed me in fucking pounds, and I saw how much I weighed. However, it was about 60 pounds less than I feared, and 10 pounds less than my guess that I gave the nurse over the phone, when this crusty old woman would call me and ask me about my fucking colonoscopy. And she would call me Jim all the time. And I said, "Hi, James Whittingham." "Oh, hi, Jim." No, I hate people who call me Jim. And it's always in a job interview or somebody who has me in a compromising position, getting back to prostitutes. Don't call me Jim. I was called Jamie as a child. You might as well call me Harry or Frank or Raoul. Jim does not register with me. And yet they assume it does. Because I'm a big, fat, dumb-looking guy. Oh, that guy's name's Jim. He ain't no James Bond, obviously. He's Jim. And he's not British. He speaks in a Saskatchewan, Canada accent. Fuck. I hated that. And she kept doing it. When she phoned back for the COVID screening the day before, I said, "Hi, James Whittingham." And she said, "Jim." And I said, "No, James." And she said, "Hi, Jim. I just wanted..." Fuck. I'd like to beat her with a sack of potatoes. Stop calling me Jim, you fucking bitch. The nice nurse asked. The first thing she said to me was, "Hi, come with me. Is it James or Jim?" And I said, "James, thank you for asking." And our relationship took off from there until I snapped at her. Kim, she had brown eyes, small brown eyes, and she was tanned artificially. And I wondered why she tanned artificially. Was she self-conscious about her body? Did she feel that she was overweight? Because some people who are good-looking and just a little bit overweight, they like to go tan because it makes them look a little bit better. Take your, who's that comedian who does that? She's orange all the time. You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to get back to that. I'll put it in my show notes. She asked me, she took my blood pressure twice, so I asked, "Is my blood pressure up?" And she paused and looked at me and said, "Actually, yes, it's 128/94. And I said, "Oh, well, the lower number is probably due to stress." And she said, "Well, why would you be stressed? There's nothing to worry about." And I snapped. I said, "Well, wouldn't you be stressed? They're going to stick a 5-foot pole up my ass to see if I have cancer. I failed the cancer screening test. I failed it. There was blood in my stool." So I turned it around. I just thanked her for everything she said after that and just was completely polite. I was the whole time, except for then, which was my anxiety. It got to me. And I wasn't really mad at her. I was like, joking, half joking. Like, "Wouldn't you be stressed? There's nothing to be stressed about. Come on. It's my third colonoscopy. I know what's going to happen. I just don't know what they're going to find." So she went away eventually, and I never saw her again because she was the intake nurse. Everyone else was unpleasant except for the people into the room where the actual probing took place. And aliens, I don't know if aliens probe people, but I don't think they go through all this procedure. I don't think there's an intake form and a lot of medical questions asked. I think they just stick it up your ass and look around. Why? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they can tell a lot. Maybe advanced civilizations and technology can tell everything they didn't know from the inside of your ass. I don't know. The guy next to me was an old man. I never saw him. They kept the drapes open, which I thought was not a good COVID thing, but I never actually looked at him. They wheeled him in. He was an old man coughing. He could barely walk back from the bathroom. He wasn't that old, actually, but he had COPD. And he had 50 illnesses related to smoking, of which he quit 18 years ago. But he was completely, he was next to death, and he didn't seem to care what they would find inside of him. He had to worry about so many other things just to stay alive every day, thanks to his fucking smoking. And I just felt like suing somebody. Fuck you, tobacco. Fuck you. How much is this costing the taxpayer? All these illnesses this one man has from smoking. How much is this fucking costing? You can't tax cigarettes enough to cover the cost to healthcare. Oh my fucking God. No. And not even talking about lost productivity and workplaces and sick days. That's nothing, baby, compared to hospital bills. Holy fuck you, tobacco. Fuck you and your mother. And there was good old boys in the other beds, good old Saskatchewan, rural Saskatchewan culture. The nurse would ask them, when's the last time you had alcohol? And they said, I had 2 rums for supper last night. 2 rums for supper should be the name of the book about Saskatchewan. Fuck. My son is staying with his great uncle who's in his 80s, and he has a couple of rums with supper, I think, every night. It's such a fucking stupid Saskatchewan thing to do. Switch to wine, people, and be like the French and have some health benefits from it at least. I don't know. So my time finally came. It was probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe later. Presumably they started doing colonoscopies around 8:30 a.m. People admitted at 7:15 a.m. I got wheeled into the room, and, you see the hospital room go by as you would on a medical procedural show on TV, and you imagine what they see. Getting wheeled through a hospital in a bed, in a gurney. It's weird. But the room was close by, and you get in there, there's a bunch of weird equipment. You don't really know what's going on. They just, the IV's already in you, and the drug they just inject into the ID. You don't even see them do it. So we have a nice little chat, and the doctor asks me a few questions. He's friendly. He's young. He's a different doctor than I, said on my form, but who cares? I'm sure he's a guy who knows what he's doing. Not some random hobo from the street who just came in and is disguising himself as a doctor, likes to go up people's asses. I'm sure that was not the case. However, I turned over, they made me sign a form, and they didn't say what was on the form. I knew what was on the form from previous colonoscopies. It says basically, don't sue us if we kill you, because there is a mortality rate of colonoscopies. There is a risk of dying during a colonoscopy or shortly after from complications if they rip your bowel. So, I felt scared because I felt, I'm really out of shape right now. I am going to the gym, but it's not fixing a whole lot of things quickly. And thank God I am, because I think things would be worse. But I told my kids I loved them, and they didn't know what to do with that information. I tell them I love them all the time, but via text, it's weird. They didn't know how to deal with it. But I felt like I had to do that. I almost wrote a letter for them, I was worried about the procedure itself killing me this time, because I'm so, I'm a higher risk than a 40-year-old person who weighs 200 pounds. I'm getting to the point where, an insect bite might kill me. So I worried about that. I worried about my breathing. Would my breathing stop? Because I snore a lot. And that's something that's happened as I've gained weight over the pandemic. And I have to get that looked at, of course. And it just sucks. But they just, asked me to turn over on my side, lift my knees as far as I could, and then straighten my legs. And it was comfortable, and I was fine. I had one hand on the bar and one hand through because my blood pressure thing went off every now and again. And, when the drugs kicked in, I didn't really know they kicked in. I felt I stopped myself. Wait, is that something? Is that something? Because I feel like I might be a little bit groggy, but I'm not sure. And next thing you know, they're going in my ass. And I didn't really feel them go in my ass. I felt them sort of whip the cloth, robes away from my ass. I didn't feel a cold draft. I didn't feel hands. I didn't feel a cold instrument go in, but it did. What I did feel was just like sort of a sensation around the anus, and not a bad one. Not a good one, but not a bad one. But that's all I felt. Like every now and again, I would feel like, what's going on? Oh, yeah, there's something going around my anus just on the outside or something on the edge. I didn't feel it inside me, but occasionally I would grimace because there would be this pain somewhere inside me, and I would grimace, but then it would go away. That was the same as the other colonoscopies. The first colonoscopy, like I said, Demerol, you could have amputated everything, and I wouldn't have cared. This one, though, I was conscious. I was completely alert and conscious, and yet they were sticking a 5-foot pole up my ass. Now, and it bends around, it goes around right angles and things like that, and it was all okay. When I closed my eyes, though, I would instantly start snoring, and I woke up, or didn't wake up, I just opened my eyes again, and I was alert again. Closed my eyes, and there was this slight snore to me, so I knew I was sleeping again. But I kept it open. I did not look at the monitor. The monitor was not there in place for me, but I probably could have. I asked them to take my glasses, and I said, don't worry about it, I don't want to see. So I just, it wasn't unpleasant. But eventually, as it went on, and these things take about 20 minutes, I think I asked how long it took at the end, and they said about 15 or 20 minutes. I can't remember which, but it was one of the two. Sometimes they can be longer if they have trouble or if they're taking biopsies. Anyway, eventually they started, there was chatter in the room, a happy chatter. And they were starting to say, oh, good job, James. And I said, what did I do? And she said, well, you cleaned out your bowel good, and we're getting, basically what they're saying is they were getting to the end and not finding anything bad. And I said, oh, well, that's a relief. And then he said, you're our gold star patient today. And this is like 1:15 in the afternoon, roughly, I would say. And thinking that they had done colonoscopies at least since 8:30, I was the first person to not have a problem. And I said, well, I feel sorry for the other patients. And the nurse said to me, well, they're not all cancer. It's okay. But that means some of them were cancer. Now, the thing about screening your colonoscopy like this is to find the cancer early and cure it. That's the reason why you do it. It's completely curable if you find it early. It's like a breast exam, perhaps. Maybe better. I don't know. Because if you find some cancers early, you can cure them, apparently. So, and I guess a lot of people, my sister-in-law had a colonoscopy, and she says she followed all the directions and she couldn't do it. Like it was not cleaned out enough. So mine was clean and they didn't find anything. They got to the end and they were like, oh, you're our gold star patient. Congratulations. Good job, James. Well done. They were all genuinely very happy that they finally had a patient this day that went well. And I was that fucking guy. I was that lucky son of a bitch who A, didn't have cancer, and B, didn't have any polyps to biopsy. Sometimes they're benign, precancerous. Sometimes they're cancerous. Sometimes you can't get through there. I was lucky in every way possible. I've said this before on podcasts, I once shot a commercial in the 90s. I used to do local commercials because of our James and Kevin TV show, and it was for my friend Doug, and it was a cell phone commercial. They played for like 3 years constantly, which added to my local fame, which was problematic in some respects. Anyway, one of the commercials had a shot of me on a window washing platform on a skyscraper. And I've said it before that I always thought these window washing, when I agreed to do it, were like, a big, huge platform with like a wet bar at the end, luxury. Well, it was basically a swing from a swing set that you get on at the top of at the edge of a skyscraper, over the edge of the building. You get off the building, you go down on this little swing set thing, and you've got a belt basically tied. And then, some of these, I moved to Toronto half a year later, and there was a skyscraper guy who died washing windows in the same city. So anyway, I did that. It was shitty. And nowadays they would do it by effects, I think. But anyway, we did it for real. And they shot from another skyscraper on me on this skyscraper. And I did it. I did the lines, and they hauled me up, and they pulled me back onto the roof of the building, and I kissed the ground. And the rest of that day, honest to God, was the best day of my life. I felt like I had cheated death. And it's not that feeling this time, but it's a pretty fucking good feeling. It's a pretty good fucking feeling. And because I was worried, my dad got his cancer diagnosis 2 weeks before he died on December 18th, 1986. 2 weeks before he died, he got his cancer diagnosis. They did an operation, found cancer everywhere. And then he died 2 weeks later. Didn't even make it to Christmas. Of course, when that happens to your dad, you think the same thing's for you. I wondered what would happen. I mean, it's all bullshit. It's not reasonable, but you can't blame me for having things cross my mind. Yeah, so things were all happy in the exam room until I said, you didn't find anything, eh? Not even a rodent? And then they went quiet. I know that was a bad joke for them, that they've probably heard a million times and don't care for, or they did find a rodent and didn't want to talk about it. One of those two things. Then in recovery, there was a 16-year-old girl across from me. And she was one of the people before me, I guess. So, but she had a scope down her throat, a different kind of scope, which, by the way, my friend Jack did. And because he had a cold, he started pulling the scope out. And they said that could have killed him. But he felt like he couldn't breathe, because I don't think that Jack realizes that esophagus is not how he breathes, but apparently he thought it did, and pulled the scope out. So, yeah, the 16-year-old girl had to have a biopsy, and that's bullshit. So, I went and I had my Big Mac. It sucked. It was warm. They're making them hot these days, but it was like dry on the inside and just not quite right, and I had a milkshake, which I never have. It sucked. I just think that's the way they are. They suck. I mean, McDonald's shakes aren't great. But that was my steak dinner. And the nurse said, fine, go have something greasy if you like, but be near a bathroom because there still might be some of that stuff in you. And I laughed and I said, I don't care. I'm happy to shit a burger up my ass. So I'm cancer-free. Christmas will be good this year. I don't know if my kids appreciate my being alive, but here I am. And I'll see you next time. Have a great holiday if I don't talk to you before then. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Sneeze. Spread the love. Tell your friends.